My family came to Australia, my maternal side of my family, they came to Australia from what is now Indonesia. They came, they wanted to buy a farm, and my grandfather bought a farm. We were assimilated into Australia. We weren't segregated. My grandfather bought a farm out of Blacktown. And we were completely assimilated into Australian society. We didn't expect and didn't want segregation. The way for all people, the way for society to proceed is complete assimilation. And that is the successful way. And very many Aborigines are completely assimilated into Australian society. The rate of intermarriage is extraordinarily high, and they are happy living together in Australia. But it's in the remote areas that we have the particular problem. This problem will not be solved by a voice in the Constitution. The voice is only going to consist of the old Aboriginal establishment, the political establishment. It will produce more politicians. That's all it will produce. It will not solve the problem of the gap. The problem of the gap will be solved by looking at the segregation in the remote areas of Australia. That's the problem, and only governments can handle that.
Yeah, David, look, the problem was that there was a romantic view that was in the period when Holt set up what the first Aboriginal voice with Nugget Coombs and a couple of others who had the sort of role of advising the Commonwealth government on the policy which the 1967 referendum gave the Commonwealth to do. Nugget Coombs initially in that period followed the example, which he thought was terrific, of an African dictator in, I think it was Tanzania, who had a socialist and who was funded by Moscow, who had a socialist dream of throwing out the British from colonisation in his state and establishing a new way of life based on traditional indigenous African culture. Now, that lasted for about 2 years. He was a total failure. He sent the country broke. I think that his country was, until then, the biggest single exporter of goods to the rest of Africa, and it became, within 2 years, the biggest single dependent on welfare from the rest of the world almost immediately, and so they gave that away. But Nugget Coombs inserted into Australian culture the idea that we should be allowing Aborigines to live their traditional lives, so that they would be happier, because they have a culture that can't change. They are individuals who are tied forever to Dreamtime and to Aboriginal country. They somehow or other get bigger vibes from the country that they walk on than we do. The whole thing was a romantic dream that was never going to work. If you mentioned Gough Whitlam and his he approved of land rights for Aborigines, and so did Malcolm Fraser after him. But there's a famous scene in Australian politics when Gough Whitlam poured sand through the hands of one of the Aborigines in Central Australia who received the first land grant, and they received the land grant, but then immediately abandoned that particular land and went to nearby centre where there was welfare payments available, sit-down money, and they sat down with their money. They didn't develop the land. They didn't do anything about it. They didn't go back and have rituals and initiation ceremonies. They sat down in white man's territory and lived off welfare. And the whole romantic dream of restoring Aboriginal culture, and you know, I mean, we live through this every day. We have welcome to country, we have acknowledgement of country. Now it's if you go to school performances or you go to anything to do with education, you have to sit through the first 10 minutes where the principal comes along and acknowledges Aboriginal ownership of the territory that we're all allowed to sit on now. It goes on and on. It's turned into a religious cult for white people, something that was initially supposed to be the revival of the religion of a people who plainly did not want it.